Hey, I'm Marty.
And I'm Lori. And Marty, before you share our key verse today, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Okay, so is there any life advice that you'd like to pass on to the next generation?
You mean like tan fat looks better than pale fat?
That's not exactly what I had in mind, but
Okay.
that's good advice.
Okay, so let me think. So I do a lot of traveling and I enjoy hiking. So how about follow Jesus and embrace the journey?
I like that. And that is a better summary of your life.
Okay. What about you? Do you have life advice that you would like to pass on to the next generation?
I'm trying to think of something funny because I did not inherit the quick wit gene like you did, but my son did, and Camden says to me often, Mom, don't sweat the petty things, but be sure and not pet the sweaty things.
I'll have to say that's some good advice too.
But seriously, my life advice, hopefully lived and spoken, is don't miss Jesus. Real life flows from him. And may it be by the grace of our Lord Jesus, both to us and through us, that we live out what we want the next generation to not only receive, but to repeat.
Mm-hmm. And isn't that what Moses was sharing with the Israelites, with the next generation as they stood on the edge of the promised land? An essential truth, the best life advice, when he recorded Deuteronomy 6:5, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might.
It is. And it's so essential that Jesus repeated it as the first and the greatest command. Okay. And one would think that all that God's people had been through with him, after he had consistently and continually proven his love for them, that it would be a given, right? That they would love him with their entire being.
You want me to answer that with logic or from personal experience?
We're both flying in that plane,
Okay.
and we'll probably have plenty of other passengers. I'm thinking every one of us would have crashed had it not. Well, I know every one of us would have crashed had it not been for a timely rescue.
And what a rescuer he is. So tell us about the ground around Deuteronomy.
Okay, so the children of Israel are standing at the edge of the land that God had promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it's called the Promised Land. Mm-hmm. And those who did not trust God, who murmured about his provision, saying they were going to die in the desert, they died in the desert. As you know, what should have been an 11-day journey turned into a 40-year wandering. Mm-hmm. Their adult children and grandchildren, along with Joshua and Caleb, remember those were the two spies who trusted God and said, we can enter this promised land, we can take the land. Well, those are the ones who are going in. But Moses even was prevented from entering Canaan because he failed to treat God as holy when he struck that rock twice for water. When they needed water the second time, and God said, speak to the rock, he struck it twice, and he was prideful in what he said. Okay. Anyway, we discover later that Moses was actually defiling the type, the picture of Christ as the rock, the one from whom living water would flow, the one who had been guiding them the whole time. We learned Paul talks about that in his letter to the Corinthians. But after Jesus was bruised for our transgressions, which the first striking pictured, now he would not be struck again. We would only speak to the rock for the living water to flow from him. Oh. So that's the type that Moses was defiling.
Okay, but God did let Moses stand on Mount Pisgah and see the land.
He did, right? And he actually let Moses stand on another mountain, you'll remember, with Jesus and Elijah. They were talking about Jesus' departure.
Oh, yeah.
That is another pivotal moment in redemption history, and one that I think involves some time travel, and I'd love to talk about that, but let's stick with Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy means second law because it's a recounting of how God expected Israel to live when they were in the land.
And I've heard that we can think of Deuteronomy as sort of a State of the Union address.
Or maybe even a national pep rally.
Okay.
Maybe our younger generations might identify with that better. And the first 4 chapters of Deuteronomy are a historical prologue. Remember, remember, remember. Don't forget what the Lord your God has done for you. And then in chapter 5, we have those first 10 commandments repeated. It's like a table of contents for the rest of the book. And our key verse then is found in chapter 6, which reiterates the first of those 10 commandments.
Okay, so let's review the first commandment, which is also our key verse from Exodus. You shall have no other gods before me. The logical response to Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Therefore, Exodus 20, verse 3, you shall have no other gods before me.
Therefore, Deuteronomy 6:5, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might.
Once again, an amazing consistency. So if we are loving the Lord with our entire being, other gods, which are false gods, will not take the place of the one who deserves first place in our lives.
Right. And when he talks about love in this verse, do you think he's talking about just a warm sentiment that
not at all, but we don't always think that through, do we?
No. And Jesus said, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. In other words, if you love me, you're going to find my commandments agreeable. You're going to know that that's the best way to live.
I know it is, but my doing it, the follow through is sometimes the problem.
Boy, it is for all of us. It's actually impossible without a heart change. Yeah. You know, one of our pastors, Dr. Eric Christensen, teaches something that I have found very helpful. He says that Christianity is not my responsibility. Mm-hmm. It's actually my response to God's ability. Oh, wow. So think about the children of Israel. They had experienced God's ability for at least 40 years. Not one of the good promises that God made to them had failed. And Moses reminds them to respond to what they knew to be true. Mm-hmm. Later, Jeremiah and Ezekiel prophesied that God would give them a new heart, enabling them to respond to what they knew would be the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. And then you and I, we've seen and experienced God's ability for more than 40 years. God's spirit has taken up residence in your spirit. He's taken up residence in my spirit to help us live out what we know to be true. That God's good promises will continue without fail.
And I am thankful for the Spirit's role as our holy reminder, except when my flesh wants to rise in rebellion, when I forget to remember how God forged the relationship between us.
Speaking of relationship, I think that's an important point because God has all of us on a relationship journey. More than 250 times in Deuteronomy, Moses refers to God as the Lord your God. So he's reminding them that they've been on a journey with God for their entire existence.
So that phrase, the Lord your God, would be a great thing to highlight when we're reading through Deuteronomy.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's cool.
God's not a new director on the scene. Not for them, not for us. He's been there lovingly and faithfully directing the scenes since before we were born, before our parents were born, and before our grandparents were born. The gracious, relational love of God is beneath the surface of everything. It's built into every law that was repeated in Deuteronomy. Of course, the immediate context of our key verse will reiterate that. So if you will go to Deuteronomy 6, and let's start in verse 3 and read through verse 9, because the context of this key verse is very important.
Okay, so, O Israel, you should listen and be careful to do this, that it may be well with you, and that you may multiply greatly, just as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you, in a land flowing with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. Here's our key verse. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. These words, which I am commanding you today, shall be on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your sons, and shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontals on your forehead. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates.
Marty, did you hear the generational and the relational love in that? Yes. So that it may go well with you and your future generations? These verses are a timely reminder that who and what we love will not only define the way we live, but it will also determine what we're going to leave for the next generation.
Wow, and that's worth repeating. Who and what we love will define the way we live and determine what we leave for the next generation.
So may my life define my message. Don't miss Jesus. Real life flows from him.
And may my life define my message. Embrace the journey with Jesus and with those he brings into your life.
Good stuff.